There is no doubt that New Testament writers used and quoted from a Greek Old Testament, which today is known as the Septuagint. The default Old Testament text of the early church was not the Hebrew, it was not the Aramaic, but most assuredly, it was the Greek Septuagint. The Apostle Paul and Luke were both prolific in their use of the Septuagint. In fact, one cannot fully understand and appreciate the nuances of the Pauline epistles, and frankly the rest of the New Testament, without a knowledge and appreciation of the Septuagint. Therefore, our ministry encourages and facilitates a better understanding of the Septuagint, something that has been neglected for far too long in the Church. There are about 283 to 300 direct quotations in the New Testament from the Old Testament, and the Septuagint is the source text for over 90% of those Old Testament quotes. We are going to look at some examples of Septuagint quotes found in the New Testament, which are not found in the KJV Masoretic Hebrew text. In fact, the New Testament writers could not have quoted from the Hebrew Masoretic text, because the Masoretic Hebrew, as we know it today, did not exist at the time the New Testament was being written, but the Septuagint did exist, and in fact, even existed centuries before the birth of Christ. In our first video of this Septuagint series, we covered the archaeological evidence, proving the existence of a BC-era Septuagint. So now in this video, we will look at a sample of passages proving that the New Testament writers did quote from the Septuagint. The first passage we will examine was also discussed in our second video of our Septuagint series. In that video, we discussed the appearance of a second kainon in Luke 3:36. At this time, I want to bring up the fact that this second kainon does appears in every New Testament manuscript that does contain Luke 3:36, so it is not a scribal error. The appearance of two kainons in Luke's genealogy is the inspired reading. However, when it comes to the Old Testament, this second kainon is only found in the Genesis chapter 10 genealogy of the Septuagint. He is not found in the KJV Masoretic genealogy of Genesis 10, which is proof that Luke quoted from a Greek Septuagint text during his time, which contained a second kainon in Genesis chapter 10. So, instead of believers thinking that Luke 3:36 is a contradiction, since they cannot find this second kainon in their Bible in Genesis 10, believers can simply turn to the Septuagint and see that Luke was simply quoting the text that the apostles and early church utilized, which was the Greek Septuagint rather than the Hebrew. Passage number 2 is Hebrews 1:6, which reads, and I quote, "But when he, God, again brings the firstborn into the world, he says, let all the angels of God worship him." Now, if the average believer goes to their KJV, a Masoretic Bible, and looks up that quote in Deuteronomy 32:43, they will not find, "Let all the angels of God worship him" in their Bibles. So, why is that? The answer is simple, because that passage is not found in your KJV, a Masoretic text, but it is found in the Septuagint, and a similar reading to Septuagint is also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. All of which confirm that the reading of the Septuagint does have a BC-era origin. So the big questions is, why is the same reading found in the Septuagint, not found in my KJV, a Masoretic Bible? Well, once again, the Septuagint is proven to be the default text of the New Testament writers, whereas the Hebrew Masoretic was the default text of the much later rabbinic movement. Therefore, the Septuagint is often the solution to clarify any alleged contradictions in the Bible between the Old and New Testaments. Passage number 3, when Stephen was brought before the Sanhedrin, he made the following statement in Acts 7:14, and I quote, "Then sent Joseph, and called his father Jacob to him, and all his kindred, 75 souls." That number, 75, is the number 75, so it is talking about 75 people. In Genesis 46:27 and Exodus 1:5 of the Septuagint, it does record the same number of 75 people in the text, the same as what Stephen stated. However, Genesis 46:27 and Exodus 1:5 of the KJV, a Masoretic, does not have 75 people, it has the number of people at 70. So it appears Stephen was using the numbers found in the Greek Septuagint. That is now 3 times that if we read something in the New Testament, and went back to the Old Testament to find the source, the KJV Masoretic would say something different from what a New Testament writer stated. Likewise, the Septuagint saved the day by having the correct information as the New Testament. Passage number 4 is Hebrews 10:5, which is an important prophecy of Jesus coming in the flesh. Which states, and I quote, "Wherefore when he cometh into the world, he saith, Sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me." This quote is found exactly as stated in Psalms 40 verse 6 of the Septuagint. But the KJV, a Masoretic text, has something totally different in Psalms 40, verse 6. Instead of saying, "But a body thou hast prepared me," the KJV, a Masoretic says, "Mine ears hast thou opened." Wow, yeah, that's way off from what Hebrews 10:5 says. So as you can see, that is not what the writer of Hebrews had in their Old Testament. The KJV, a Masoretic, messes up this prophecy. But the Septuagint has it correctly stated. Which means once again, the Septuagint was the likely source for the writer of Hebrews. Passage number 5 is a good one, and involves a teaching from Jesus. In Matthew 15, verses 8 through 9, Jesus quotes Isaiah 29:13, which in the KJV, a Masoretic Hebrew, states, and I quote, "Wherefore the Lord said, Forasmuch as this people draw near me with their mouth, and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men." End of quote. Now look at that last portion of the verse which says, "Their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men." That portion sounds very favorable to the scribes and Pharisees as being great teachers, doesn't it? However, that is not what Jesus said in Matthew 15. Jesus actually said, and I quote, "But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." End of quote. Jesus was actually rebuking the scribes and Pharisees. So, what Jesus said in Matthew 15 is not found in Isaiah 29:13 of your KJV, a Masoretic Bible, or any modern translation that relies on the Masoretic Hebrew, which most do. However, you will find the quote from Jesus exactly as Jesus taught, in the Septuagint. Passage number 6 is our final passage that we will cover in this video. This passage is 1 Peter 4:18, where Peter states, and I quote, "And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear?" End of quote. In this verse Peter is quoting Proverbs 11:31, which in the KJV, a Masoretic, reads, "Behold, the righteous shall be recompensed in the earth, much more the wicked and the sinner." Wait. That is not the message of Peter. The KJV, Masoretic, and modern translations are very different from what Peter said. However, Proverbs 11:31 in the Septuagint is exactly what Peter stated. Okay, so, we can go on and on with many more examples, all the Septuagint quotes like these, but these 6 should be enough to prove that the New Testament writers did in fact quote from the Septuagint. And if the New Testament writer did quote from the Septuagint in the 1st century AD, then that also means the Septuagint had to have been around prior to the 1st century AD. And I would say, even before the birth of Christ, because the Septuagint could not have held any scriptural authority or respect if the Septuagint was a recent invention of the early church. Now, couple that point with the archaeological evidence of BC-era Septuagint manuscripts, and now you have solid reasons to believe the Septuagint truly was developed in the 3rd century BC. And that it was a cherished and authoritative translation of a very early Hebrew text, which predates the rabbinic-based Masoretic text, only known to have been written over 1,000 years after the Septuagint. Like the New Testament writers and early church that sought the Septuagint for their source text of the Old Testament, we encourage every believer today to also add the Septuagint to their library and to utilize it for their studies. In our upcoming videos we will address some common objections to the Septuagint and a more in-depth study of the Genesis genealogy, so stay tuned for more to come. We would also like to announce that our ministry will be producing YouTube Shorts, which are 60-second or less videos, on biblical topics that cram facts in a bite-sized video, which people love to consume on their phones and mobile devices. Therefore, we will be producing regular-sized videos as normal, and also shorts to meet the needs of our audience, and the demand for more biblical information. So, until our next video, Maranatha.